Okay, it's time for another Q&A. It's been 2 weeks since the last one, so I appreciate the patience, and I've got 6 fantastic questions for this week's episode. As always, if you'd like your question answered on this series, leave it down in the comments. Just put your question there, I'll answer it in a video. If you want to remain anonymous or you want just your first name, please state that. And if it's a more lengthy question, feel free to email me, info@Kibble Watches. But for those of you that are new here, my name's James, I run kibblewatches.co.uk, where we buy and sell watches basically, so I'm a watch dealer. So that's the sort of angle of this Q&A. You get to ask a watch dealer questions, get a bit more behind the scenes, and again, I keep it very real and honest, which I think a lot of you really appreciate. So thank you for tuning in, and let's crack on with it. Oh, quickly, before we do that, what's on wrist, because it's probably catching a few of your eyes. This is a gorgeous 18 karat gold Gerald Perregaux Art Deco. And as you can see, it's like pink gold. It's got the onyx battens. The date is actually hidden away in that 3 o'clock batten, which is super, super cool. Really interesting lugger design, square case, automatic, surprisingly, with the gyromatic movement. This is a really special piece. It's going to be off for service soon, and then it will be coming for sale, which is kind of a shame because I want to keep it. And that gets on to one of the questions in this week's episode. But yeah, that's what's on wrist. So question number 1 is from Michael. He asks, how was the British Watchmakers Day? Yes, that was when this goes live. It was the Saturday before. So yes, it was good. I have to be I'm going to be very honest. So it was a very, very good show, and from the outside looking in, as in with all the photos and videos and the content that's come out of it, it's incredible. It's a great thing for the British watchmaking scene and the British watch industry overall. I think the amount of people who weren't there, who saw those images, were like, wow, you know, there's a real buzz, a real energy. And there really is. You know, when you're in the room, the appetite for more British watch brands is incredible. The enthusiasm at each stand is amazing. The limited editions seem to sell incredibly well for all the brands. And obviously speaking to the brand owners, because I know a fair few of them, they all said about how great it was, and collectors seem to really enjoy it as well. Now, for me personally, it's too busy. So that's a personal criticism, and it's nothing, you know, of anyone's fault. It's just for me. It's too busy, and I feel like you can't really get the most out of it. You know, you're kind of stuck in a big group of people at each stand, which is, you know, probably the length of this table or a bit more, and you're all trying to sort of crowd in there, see the watches, talk to the brand owner or the people working there, and you can't really see a lot, and you can't really spend a lot of time unless you're incredibly patient and waiting ages, and navigating through the queue of the limited edition Studio Underdog and Fizz, which was incredible, really great watch, and it's sold out unsurprisingly throughout the day, so congratulations to them. So yeah, I would say it's a bit too busy, a bit too crowded, and they could do with a bigger space, but it comes with its own problems. So speaking with some of the brand owners, if they had more space and more table footage, they would need to hire another member of staff. It's going to cost them more. The venue is going to cost more. All the costs end up increasing to sort of spread that range, and then they'd also have more capacity, so they would want to fill that capacity, rightfully so. So yeah, it's just, that's my only criticism. I think as a collector and as an enthusiast, you definitely need to go. You need to experience it, but it's probably not something I'll be going to again, to be completely honest. Maybe I will, we'll see. But yeah, for me, it was just a bit too busy, and you couldn't actually focus on the watches. Thankfully, I was there mainly just to speak to people. It was great to meet so many of you there. A lot of familiar faces and a lot of brand new faces. So thank you to everyone who came up, said hello. We had a chat. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you were there, do let me know down in the comments what you thought. And I did pick up one watch. It wasn't the Studio Underdog Fizz. I wasn't going to queue for that. And also I wanted to leave that for people who really wanted it. I picked up the Marlowe Mora 310 10-year anniversary piece, which is really cool. I love the colours, I love the design. I've always really enjoyed what Marlowe do. I think they're massively underrated, and a lot of people just forget about them. And the fact they're 10 years this year is incredible. That's a feat upon itself, really, in the British watchmaking in general. So congratulations to them, and that is the watch I picked up. Question number 2 is from Gary. Thank you for another question. He asked, what's your favorite GMT watch at 3 price points? Great question. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give you 3 price points, so budget, mid-tier, and prestige or luxury. And I'm going to give you like the basic answer, the answer I think is best for everyone. And then I'm going to give you my kind of slightly left field option as well, just to keep it interesting. So we'll start with budget. I think it's going to be a no-brainer. It's going to be like the Seiko GMT or a Christopher Ward GMT. Again, budget, you know, what are we talking about here? I'm going to probably say around £1,000 or less. So yes, Seiko GMT, Christopher Ward GMT will be great options either or. For the slightly left field option, and I'm going to include world timers as part of the GMT because they offer a similar function like with the world time GMT. Anyway, it's going to be an Oris world time GMT 7494 is the reference. I've sold one or two over the years. Really cool watch. You can pick them up around £1,000, maybe a bit more depending on condition and set. Yeah, really cool watch. Very interesting, great design, great fit and feel. And again, slightly different if you're after something a bit more interesting, I would say. And then the mid-tier, I mean, there's so many great options, really. You could look at the Grand Seiko Elegance GMT, for example. That's one of my all-time favorites, really. And then you've got the Tudor Black Bay Pro or the Black Bay GMT. Again, great options. They're your sort of more run-of-the-mill. Even Grand Seiko would probably be considered a bit more left field, but I will put that in the mainstream camp because I've had so many and I think they're great. My slightly more obscure one is actually going to be the Bulgari Diagno. I butcher that pronunciation every time. Scuba GMT, specifically the SD38ST, which again is one I've had in stock. I love this watch. I love the design. I've had the chrono versions. I've had the time only versions. I've had the ones on those rubber straps. I think they're brilliant. I think they're really cool. And I do think they're undervalued. Price point of those, I mean, again, you could probably find one for like £1,500 or less, maybe £2,000. So it's probably not quite mid-tier. Mid-tier is probably considered a couple of thousand. But the reality is there seems to be a bit of a void, and I'm sure many of you could list 20 watches in this price point I'm about to give. But between sort of like 3 and 5,000, yes, there are of course options, but it seems like a bit of a void in general of like great watches in that price point. It seems like you're either under the 3,000, and again, I'm talking pre-owned here, you're either under the £2,000 price point or 3,000, or you're like in the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 figure. I know there's watches in between there, but I just feel like it's a bit of an odd price point that you don't find a huge amount on, personally. And then the final one, the Prestige Luxury, obviously the Rolex GMT Master. As cliche as it is, you can go vintage, go for something a bit quirky. You know, one of my favorites is actually the root beer, vintage root beer. I had a Mark III nipple dial years ago. Love that. Would love to have one of those in the personal collection. But anyway, my slightly more left field option is going to be an AP Royal Oak Dual Time, which does count as the GMT. 39mm, specifically the 26120 ST, probably in blue, but there's two-tone, there's loads of great options. I just think that's a really underrated Royal Oak. The size is great. It's not the big, massive one. It's not the tiny little one. It sort of works for everyone. The complication's great, and the price point I also think is pretty brilliant. I'll put on screen like a rough price point because it really does vary. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're my options. I'd look forward to hearing what you think. It's just a great GMT in general. What would you say? And what do you think of my recommendations? Question number 3 is from Justin Galore. Thank you for the question. He asked, what is the best bargain you have ever picked up? I mean, there's been a few over the years. I've been very fortunate. A lot of which I have obviously sold. What would I say is the best? I would probably say the watch I actually gifted to my wife and I still quite a lot. It's a Wittnauer chronograph with a Valjoux 72. For those of you that know your vintage watches, you'll know the Valjoux 72 is a very famous movement used in a lot of watches, but most famously it was used in the Rolex chronographs, the pre-Daytonas basically. And is a well-coveted watch and movement. And in those watches, if you find nice ones, they're £30,000 plus at least, usually, for really good examples. But the Wittnauer I have is a reference 6002/5 specifically. And interestingly, if you saw the latest release of the Moonswatch that commemorates the 1965 Speedmaster, they had in the set 3 watches total. They had the Speedmaster, they had obviously the Rolex equivalent, which actually had the Valjoux 72. And then they had the Wittnauer Longines one, which also had the Valjoux 72. Now, our version is pretty much that watch. Not quite exactly the same, but pretty much. So it's quite interesting to see that that's now getting some recognition and light. The history of it's amazing. And the example I have is really great. I picked it up for, at the time, a great price, and obviously over time it has become even more so of a great price. The chap I bought it from may potentially be watching this because we still do a lot of business together, and he's a very good friend, I would say. So thank you very much. I still enjoy that. You know, my wife loves it. So it went to a good home. But yes, I would say I actually got that for a bargain, to be honest. I'm sorry, my friend. It's how it goes sometimes. But luckily, I know you've picked up a fair few bargains from me as well. So it goes both ways. But that's what I would say. And then, you know, I've been fortunate. Lots of cool Midos and Movados. But I would say that one sticks in my mind as being one where I'm like, I did well on that one. But again, it's probably one that would never go for sale. So yeah, that's mine. I'd look forward to hearing what's the best bargain you've ever picked up. Let me know down below. I think 9 times out of 10 it's going to be vintage. Reason being, modern is just so easy to price, really. In the grand scheme of things, it's hard to get a great deal. Of course, you do every now and again, but on vintage, there's so many caveats and nuances and things people just don't know that they just throw something on eBay, and sometimes you can find a really cool watch at a cool price. Question number 4 is from Yates. He asks, how often do you come across watches that you pick up for yourself? Do you think you are tempted more often than not? Great question. Yes, absolutely. I was a collector before I was a watch dealer, and I've always collected things. I'm a bit of a hoarder and collector in general. For example, I have 40, 50 bottles of whiskey, but they're all open. We do drink them. They're not really collecting in that way. We have some nice art, nothing crazy, but I have a fair few jackets and shoes. I like certain things. Collecting gene is in my blood. So for me, yes, absolutely. This is probably the worst job I could have ever gone into. Especially as my own boss, because there's no one really there other than the taxman and VAT every quarter to tell me that I can't keep these things forever. So yes, absolutely. And there's a lot of stuff I buy that I'm like, that is stock, and then I end up keeping it. What would be a very good recent example? The JW Benson triple calendar moon phase gold plate that I wore to the British Watchmakers Day along with this watch. I love that watch. That was purchased with the intent of being stock. And I can't let it go. I absolutely love it. So that's an example. This being another one, but because of the price point and how quirky it is, and a lot of people really are interested, I kind of feel like I've got to let it go, to be honest. So this is going to be one that will be for sale, but it falls into the same camp. If circumstances were different, if I didn't have VAT about to come out, I'd probably keep it for a bit longer, but I've had it a fair while already. So yeah, I get tempted far more often than I should. There's some things that stick around far longer than they should with me. But again, I'm the boss. I get to choose what I do. And if I buy a watch and I like it, I'll keep it for a while. And to be honest, my wife is a bad influence, because if she likes something and I like something as well, she'll be like, let's just keep it. So yeah, not great. So hopefully that answers your question. Question number 5 and 6 are from the same person who wishes to be anonymous. So question 5 is there still room for new dealers to come into the market? Yes, I would say there is. Now, is the market saturated? Absolutely. There are so many dealers out there. There's so many options with online and Instagram. There's what the sort of inside trade call Instagram dealers or backpack dealers. They've always been around, but there's a lot more of them today. And the reality is I started off that way. I now obviously have a physical location. Everything's very formal and processes, and there's a lot there. But back in the day, yes, it was a bit more of like you had 10 watches for sale and you ran around wherever you could, showing people and getting them sold. There's that avenue you can go down. There's the retail avenue, like what I do. There's the shop avenue if you want to go down that route. There's so many options. What I would say is I think it's probably, and I was speaking with someone, a trader about this recently, and someone in the industry, funny enough, at the British Watchmakers Day. I think it's harder nowadays to get into the industry with a wide range. And what I mean by that is, the ethos I have, which is I kind of stock everything, from vintage to modern, pre-owned to new, affordable to expensive. The range of stuff you will see on Kibble watches is immense, and I think it's what draws a lot of people in. But I do think it'd be hard to come into it from that angle nowadays. I think you probably have to specialize a bit more. A good example of that, and these are two people I mention a fair bit, and I hope they don't mind, but when you look at someone like Fathom Watches, he has, or they have a very clear direction of what they do, which is, I would say, higher end quality vintage pieces. And it's very apparent that's what you get with them. You look at someone like Bold Timepieces, similar thing, but a bit more affordable. You're going to get some quirky, fun stuff in there, but it's quite, and he will have the odd thing here and there that doesn't sort of fit the mold, but for the most part, he's quite consistent with what you get. I think that's probably the way to do it now, because you've got to be recognized for something, whereas, I've built this being recognized kind of for everything, which is quite an interesting way of doing things, but I think it's much harder to do. So that would be my only recommendation. Try and specialize, as difficult as it is, and as much as I wouldn't want to do that personally. I don't think we'll ever specialize. I think the range is what I do and will continue to do forever. But yeah, I think if you're coming into it now, you probably need to specialize or just be as patient as ever and just build on brand and reputation, which is what I did. So yes, there is room. hopefully that answers your question. And again, any more questions in this sort of realm, please ask them. It's always interesting. And I'm always getting asked them in person or, at the British Watchmakers Day, the amount of people I had come up asking actually about becoming watch dealers. So yeah, ask away. I'm always happy to help. I think there's enough room. And the reality is, some people say, why would you be that honest? Because they're going to become your competition. And the reality is competition's good. It's good for the market. But also, and I don't mean this in a sort of cocky, horrible way, but I've been asked hundreds of times by people who are very passionate, love watches, how to become dealers, and I've sort of laid the ground for them, and maybe one or two have actually gone and done it. What I mean by that is you can give everyone all the information, but they've got to act on it. And again, it's not easy, and you have to be patient, and it takes a lot of work. So it won't be for everyone. And I think having that honesty straight up is best. A fair few people, once I've given them the lay of the ground and spoken about insurance and the processes, VAT, tax, all this kind of stuff, broke down the costs associated, a fair few people have gone, it doesn't sound worth it, I'll stick to my day job. So again, I think the honesty is best there. And the final question 6 from the same chap who wishes to be anonymous. This is going to be a heavy one to end on. Has Anthony Farrer made consignment more difficult? Great question. So Anthony Farrer, quick rundown for those of you that don't know. There was a company in the US called Timepiece Gentleman, ran by someone called Anthony Farrer. I think it's Anthony. He was someone who had been in prison before for other things. He was very open about that. He basically just started selling watches, and he built this great Instagram account and was very visual. Everything you could basically see everything. He vlogged. He would show everything on camera. He'd show in the office, and he started hiring people, and he started scaling, and people were, the videos were incredibly popular. He brought the watch market, I would say, quite up, in terms of market awareness. His name would be mentioned quite a bit early days before everything kicked off, obviously. Now, he always had a little bit of, something about him. Obviously, in hindsight, it's an easy thing to say. I do recall early days saying, something doesn't feel quite right, especially when he would go out and spend £2,000 or $2,000 on a meal and then drive home in his Lamborghini that he just bought. And every watch was pretty much on consignment, and he was doing something as silly like 4% consignment fees. And, it just wasn't adding up. I think it was becoming quite clear to a lot of people, this is probably a Ponzi scheme. He's robbing Peter to pay Paul, as they say. And I think, that's obviously what happened. In the end, he had defrauded people of about $5 million overall. He's just been sentenced to prison, I think 60 months or 50 months, something like that. I don't know all the details, so I do apologise. You're welcome to Google it, and you'll find everything you could want on this. I think 2 or 3 million of it was investors' money, because he took on investors. He got a penthouse, and he was going to operate out there. It was this crazy thing. And then 2 million was consignors, was customers, was normal people that he sold a watch to or for and never paid them, resold the watch multiple times. So there was people on all ends that were out of pocket and out of watch and out of money, and watches were then obviously flagged as stolen, because technically that is what they are if they're not being paid for. Basically, it just sent a ripple through the industry that just wasn't good. Now, mostly in America, obviously there was a few chaps on this side of the pond that were positive about him, defending him, and obviously that showed. So let's get to your question. So has it made consignment more difficult? Yes and no. So initially, when it all kicked off and it all came out, yes, there was a lot of talk from a lot of traders and dealers, unfortunately, on social media and YouTube, talking very badly about consignment overall, like saying stuff along the lines of, never do consignment. Consignment has always been the bad end of the industry, and acting as if they've never done it or don't do it. And I can say for a fact, some of those people that were talking this way consign. I know for a fact, and I know through customers, and I know through themselves. They have consigned, they do consign, and they will consign. So, and maybe a bit of context there, consignment is where you do sale or return. You leave a watch with us, we sell it on your behalf, we take a commission for the process. That's the basis of consignment. So yes, there was a lot of fallout, and there was a lot of people pretending like they didn't do consignment, and that the consignment was the issue, not the person, not the process, not the blind trust that people gave to Anthony Farah, but the consignment was the issue, which isn't the case. You know, consignment happens in every industry, it happens in the car industry, it happens in this industry. It is abundant, and it's not a bad thing as long as it's done correctly. So initially, yes, there was a lot of people going, you know, why can we trust you, but you know, people can't trust Anthony Farah? Those kind of questions. And the reality is, there's a few things, right? A lot of people trust him just on his internet persona. You know, he was visually there, you could see him, and people thought, I can trust him, and would just send him the watch. You need a consignment agreement. We have a legally binding consignment agreement with both parties that has to be signed. States all the details, states the price, states the commission, states our range of negotiation, all those kind of things. It's all there legally. You need a consignment agreement. And I have customers who I have dealt with for 5-6 years who will just send me their watches, and I still insist on, you know, yes, thank you, but let me still send you a consignment agreement. One, it's a good thing to do. And two, you know, if I get hit by a bus, you need some legal paperwork to help with the process of proving who's who, right? As much as I have a great system, it's just a better process if you have the paperwork, right, to say your watch is with me. Obviously, hopefully I'm not going to get hit by a bus, but you know what I mean. So there's that process. There's also the reality of what kind of person are you dealing with. And what I mean by that is he was showing everyone his lifestyle. He was showing that he was going out gambling, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars at the casinos in Vegas. He was buying new cars left, right, and center. He was eating out the most lavish restaurants. He always had his own personal Richard Milles and APs and, you know, millions and millions of pounds worth of watches in his own collection. You know, I don't show a lot of my personal life, but I can assure you I don't do things like that. I drive a Kia. I have quite a modest collection that I've built up over many years, and I still have to sell off watches every now and again to just make ends meet and pay large VAT bills and tax bills as they come in. So, you know, I'm not living lavish and living that kind of lifestyle. But also reputation is everything. You know, if you mess up, it's out there forever. So, you know, trust what people say. So if you go on all of the places you could possibly go, Trustpilot, Google, forums, the overwhelming experience of a lot of people is positive with me, and you can come and see that for yourself. Now, the thing to remember is you don't have to do consignment. So if you do want to just sell your watch, just sell your watch. You know, get the straight payout, make it simple. But accept you are going to make less in that process because there is less things involved than you will if you consign. That's the nature of it. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't know if I covered all the points. Probably went on a bit of a tangent there, trying to tread a little carefully because obviously I don't want to get people in the shit, and I don't want to sit here and be a drama queen because that's not what this is about. You know, I'm not here to cause drama. The drama's already happened. Anthony Farah did what he did. He's now in prison. It's a hard lesson learnt, but one that has happened before in the past. You know, speaking to dealers, they mentioned people from 15, 16 years ago who did a similar thing and just ran off and just went quiet and are still out there today. You know, unlike Anthony Farah, who was caught and is in prison. So just be careful. That's what I would say. Be careful, do your due diligence. And if something doesn't feel right, whether with me or anyone, don't do it. You know, listen to your gut. If you're sat with someone, you go, this just doesn't feel right, step away. Take your watch away. Don't do it. It's not worth it, you know. So hopefully that answers your question. But yes, very interesting. I was waiting for that question to come up, to be honest. Wondered how long it will be. So yes, very long-winded, but I really appreciate all the questions. I look forward to seeing what questions you've got for the next episode. And yeah, let's keep this going. Keep the questions coming in, and I'll keep answering them. So we'll see you all again next Sunday. Take care.